welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl, Kiki Reader, and we're diving right back into our Tangled series. If you haven't listened to the book review for the first book in this series, Tangled Up in Ice, I'm going to put that link down in the description below. Once you finish that, then join us as we dive into book 2, which is Tangled Up in Pain. So this book starts off right where we left off. Harley's in a state of shock after finding out that her mother has been in this car accident and she's in the hospital. And so Harley, of course, stated that she doesn't want to go. Better yet, she feels like she can't go. So Jackson, normal question, is going to ask her why. And she says, a lot has happened, with why I don't really talk to my parents that much. She doesn't talk to her mother at all. And she barely talks to her father. And so, at first she's like, okay, well, what do you want to know? What part do you want to know? But then he tells her, listen, I done bared a piece of my soul to you, so, tell me something. And so then she starts kind of pouring out everything to him. So after the fire, her parents got a divorce, and the mother apparently had started taking up with an old high school boyfriend that she apparently, had, I guess with all the grief, they grew apart, and then she found this solace in this guy. So her parents got divorced. So ever since that happened, she hasn't talked to her mother. So old girl, when she feels a certain way, she keeps that same energy. So she didn't talk to her father either for a little while after that, but she at least talks to him a little bit. And the mother kind of talks to the father, and that's kind of how they communicate. But she doesn't directly talk to her mother at all. So Jackson tells her, you need to go. He's like, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. And so after thinking about it, she kind of agrees. And so she starts looking at flights on her phone, and it's going to cost her a good $1,000. And so Jackson's like, you can just take my plane. I was like, wow, the rich, right? So she thought automatically that he was going to come along since it's his plane, but he was waiting for her to ask. So finally he's like, oh, you want me to? She's like, yeah, it's your plane. I thought you were going to come anyway. So he's going to come along with her. He takes her to her place to get some things. He packs some stuff before they left the mansion, and then they head off to the airport to fly on the PJ. So they're only up in the air for a few minutes before he presses the button for the whole do not disturb, so the flight attendants will know not to come back. So then he gets all demanding and dominating. I like that. And he tells her, he starts making her take off different clothing, and they have a nice old rough session on the plane. So when they descend, Jackson, he can't help but admire how beautiful Missoula, Montana is. It's mountains, it's nature, it's beautiful. And so he was thinking, they were going to go straight to the hospital. And she's like, let's go to the hotel first. He was like, okay. Because she's avoiding it. She don't really want to deal with this. So, yeah, she's trying to give herself as much time as possible. So eventually they get to the hospital, and when they get there, they give them visitors passes and tell them to go to this area called B. And so she sees her father, and he's sitting next to someone, but she can't really make out who it is. So she yells at her dad. She's like, Dad. And he jumps up and he hugs her, and they both cry for a little while. And then she lets go of him, and she sees her mom. And her mom doesn't have a scratch on her. So Harley's like, you heal fast. It's like, well, damn. So then the other woman, who she didn't know, but we find out her name is Dr. Lowe, she asked this girl, why did you cut off communication with your mother? I'm like, wait a minute. So we just finding out that you all have lied to me, that my mother was not in an accident, And the first question that you have for me is, why did I cut my mother out? I wonder why. If she doing lies like this, I wonder why. You know? But like, Harley's brain is still stuck. Like, she knows that it was a lie, but she's still like thinking there's no possible way that they will lie to me and tell me that she was in an accident. Like, there's no way. She's like, no, you just healed really fast, right? That's what this is. Because you didn't lie to me. I know you didn't lie to me. And so she looks at her father. He's got this guilty look on his face. And all her mom says is, I'm sorry. So Dr. Lowe keeps trying to talk to her. And she just ignores the woman. And she storms out. And I get that. Like, I'm not talking to you. You know? Like, I don't know why they thought that that would work. Like, really? You thought that was going to work? So she storms out. She's disgusted. Beyond pissed that her mother would go to this extent to talk to her. So Harley wanted to go back to New York right then. But Jackson was like, listen, I've booked a nice cabin or like a chalet for a few days. And she was so exhausted, she didn't even argue. She was like, just take me to the cabin. I just want to go to sleep, you know. So of course they pull up. It's gorgeous, big, beautiful. Of course it would be. The next morning she wakes up, no Jackson in the house. But he left her a note that said, you know, I stepped out for a little bit. I'll be back shortly. And it said, love, Jackson. So, of course, you know, her mind starts to kind of wonder, like, did he mean he loved me? Like, you know, like, or was it just pleasantries? You know, overthinking as she, you know, we sometimes do as people, you know. And so the thoughts become kind of overwhelming. And then she's like, you know what? I need to write. That's her solace. I'm going to write. So she can't, of course, because her mind, like, is running. So she decides, you know, put on some clothes, go outside. And she has a memory of her brother. You know, they used to make snow angels. So she kind of gets on the ground and she starts making snow angels. And she pretty much does it until her butt's numb. And she goes back inside. And then shortly after, Jackson comes in with the pastries from like a local bakery. So she dives in and she can tell something's up with Jackson. So he finally tells her that he went to see her dad that morning. Harley's super pissed. Cause she's like, I can't believe you would go see him. Like, after what they did, it, you know, so she's spazzing a little bit. And she's like, you know, she's pissed, but at the same time, she's curious. She wants to know, well, what did you talk about? So Jackson tells her that her dad and her mom, apparently they're back together. And she, of course, is shocked, but at the same time, she knows her dad is actually good for her mom. Like, he balances her out. Like, she's the extreme, he's the calm. And they just kind of, he balances her out. So her mom is also a cop, by the way. That's scary that she's a cop and she's extreme. That's a little scary. But I digress. So then he tells her that her father asked him, you know, what are your intentions with my daughter? He's like, because I don't want her wasting her time with anyone. And so good old Jackson tells him that he loves her. And then he looks at Harley and says, I love you. And Jackson hadn't really anticipated on saying that to her so soon. But I guess, you know, it's how he felt. He said what he felt. Okay, go with it. So then it kind of switches to Jackson's point of view. This goes back and forth. I always love books like that like speak from each one of their point of views. So Jackson kind of narrates the next part, and he kind of talks about the encounter with his dad, with her dad, and you know, it was decent. Wasn't anything extreme. He didn't find out some massive information. He basically just found out the little that he told her. And so then it goes back to the present, where he just told Harley that he loved her, and then he kisses her, and she pulls back and she tells him, I love you too. And then of course they have a nice hard session. It was like nice and rough, just to it. There was no like, it was like, yeah, there was kissing and stuff like that, but it was like, no, we need to feel each other. It was hot. So he doesn't want to leave Missoula just yet. And he tells her, you know, we probably won't be able to fly out today. And she looks at him and she's like, you don't seem too mad about it. And Jackson was like, I really don't want to leave. He's like, it's still some things, I would like to do while I'm here. So then they have a conversation about her writing. And because she was looking for work on a website that she used to go to get different jobs. And Jackson was like, I thought you were working for me. And she was like, well, you don't have anything for me to do, and I still got to make money. And so he, of course, was like, I'm rich. I'll give you money. And she, of course, was like, I don't want to just take your money. Like, I make my own way. And so he asked her, if you could write anything you wanted, what would it be? And she was like, a romance novel. And so he was like, well, move in with me and write your novel. And she, of course, has reservations about this. She's written some short stories before, and she sent them off to be published, and they were declined. They were rejected. So, that's when he starts to tell her about self-publishing, and she starts liking the idea, and it gets her like super excited, like, oh my gosh, and it's that idea that you can't get your work out there. And I understood that, because that's how I felt. So I was like, that's real. That's how it feels. And so Jackson then, he pulls up Amazon. He kind of starts showing her the different books and that are self-published. And she's like beyond excited. She's inspired. And so he tells her, listen, I'll pay you to write your own novel. And so she comes up with the stipulation that he can't give his feedback on her work. And he was like, you don't do that to the people you do it for now. And she's like, that's my stipulation. So he, of course, agrees. So then she immediately just kind of starts working on her outline, and then she starts writing her first chapter. Just things, it just starts to pour out of her. And so she just completely loses track of time. And when she looks up, Jackson's like looking at his phone, and she just, she's like, Jackson, thank you for inspiring me. And that was a sweet moment. And so then after that, Harley agrees, okay, I'll meet with my dad. And so Jackson orders food from like all kind of different places, just kind of make sure they can have a really nice meal. And so her and her dad basically have a bunch of small talk when he gets there. And eventually she can't take it anymore because they were like talking about politics and his job because he's a teacher. And so Harley's like, so whose idea was it to come up with this whole accident thing to get me here? So her dad was like, it was your mom. He was like, it was her. I didn't want to do it. He said, I tried to resist, but she wore me down. So he basically tells her, like her mother was, she posed the question, why didn't she just come to visit? And he said she was afraid that she would come there and you wouldn't open the door. And so Harley's like, well, how could she think that? And he's like, well, you wouldn't take her calls and you barely spoke with me, so why would she not think that? And then Harley's dumbass, she's kind of like, yeah, I guess. But she still wants to be mad. So even though she knows like that's logical of why a person, even though I still feel that was extreme. There could have been maybe another white lie or something you could have said. I don't know. But that was extreme. I think she probably could have been more honest and said, hey, can we do family counseling? Like that, just, I don't know, just something a little bit more authentic. But that whole like making someone feel that panic and that fear, and that's just kind of awful. Like, I don't know. That was just too extreme. So nothing was really resolved. They ate their food and everything like that, said their pleasantries, they left. Nothing was resolved, but she did at least feel a little bit lighter about the situation. And so then Jackson asked to go sightseeing the next day. She takes him to the mountains. He loves it. She's freezing her ass off. And so she tells him, it's even better in the summer. Of course, he's like, well, we should come back. And she's like, well, what if I don't want to? And Jackson's like, well, if you don't, I'll just come back by myself. He's like, I'm sure your dad will be happy to show me around. And I just had to laugh because it was like, it's the truth. So they're leaving the mountains, and then Jackson asked to go to the Byrd Ranch. So the Byrd Ranch, remember, it's the house that her parents had built, and it's the one where Aspen was killed in the fire. And so at first Harley is like, no, I can't do it. But then she caves after Jackson says he wants to see the place. Like, he explained to her why he wanted to see it. I want to see